Lord, we are gathered here today to give thanks and grace for this gift, this blessing, for our prayers have been answered. May we all be endowed by your Holy Son, our Jesus, as we come together and offer our astrites to you. The absolute best character in version 2 of Wuthering Waves has arrived. Of course, Kuro would be a jerk and hold her until the very end of the year, so us men and women of culture had to just sit there waiting impatiently for it, like, come on. But you know what, good things come to those who wait, and better late than ever. It makes sense though, Rinasita is based on Europe and Chisa is a Japanese name, so unsurprisingly she was meant to be a precursor to version 3. In any case though, she's finally here. Brax may have enjoyed getting his waifu at the start of version 2, but I get to have the last laugh with... Carrying a massive pair of scissors, Chisa appears to follow along the trend of Havoc units being mentally well adjusted, I'm sure. Focusing on for a moment though, she's our newest Havoc unit and a broadblade user at that. Up until this point, Havoc units were mostly in the scope of echo skill casting based on Cantarella and Frolova. On the other hand, you have the dual Havoc engine consisting primarily of Havoc Rover and Dungeon, or maybe Camellia and Rocha. Given the former is doing well as of late, I think it would be best for Chisa to update the latter group, or she could perhaps go into a completely new field altogether. Either way, we're about to find out. I'll be looking through her abilities and gameplay to break down how you should play her, along with a brief guide on how to build her, what teammates to put her with, what sequences are worth pulling for if you feel like wailing, before wrapping things up with the title of the video. Is she a must pull or skip? Obviously she's a must pull based on character alone, but I'll try my best to be unbiased. The second half of version 2 is pushing more in the direction of units who are capable of playing into a general attack focused win condition, but with the ability to synergize exponentially when playing into a certain archetype. For example, Augusta is a powerful attacker but can get buffed even further when paired with the Uno. Same applies to Galbrena, where she hits like a truck even at base but gets all the more stronger when Chilyuan is added to the mix. At a glance, Chisa follows that same line of thinking. She obviously will specialize in a certain niche, but the way she's designed enables her to potentially work into a more all-purpose approach too. Right away, the most eye-catching thing about her, aside from clearly being the superior waifu to everyone, is how she taps into a new attribute status, Havoc Bane, the Havoc counterpart to Erosion and Frazzle. However, unlike those two, which are stacking damage over time debuffs, Havoc Bane on the other hand is a stacking defense shred, inherently being more universal in value given that anyone can take advantage of reducing enemy defense. By default, Havoc Bane stacks up to 3 times, with every stack reducing the target's defense by 2%. That may not seem like a whole lot, but keep in mind that currently we don't have many ways to lower enemy defense in Wuthering Waves, if any at all. It's new territory essentially. Anyways, not unlike how Galbrena has her demon mode, Chisa also has an empowered state containing the bulk of her power called chainsaw mode. We're really going into the killer schoolgirl motif with this one, nice and edgy. To enter chainsaw mode, you have to fill up her Forte gauge ring of chainsaw, which you can do by basically attacking enemies with any of her abilities, though her basic attacks and ultimate are most conducive to that. Then you can enter chainsaw mode using her skill, which ordinarily is just a blast of havoc damage that can lead into her basic attack combo. Upon reaching full Forte, it makes her drag in nearby enemies affected by Unseen Snare. Unseen Snare is basically a mark that Chisa can apply to enemies when damaging them with her skill, doing a dodge counter, or locking onto a target, like the middle mouse click. Marked enemies that take damage will then subsequently get Havoc Bane stacks applied to them up to once per 2 seconds. Apart from that, at full Forte she also enters chainsaw mode. While in Chainsaw mode, Chisa gains a new set of attacks that do bonus damage and steadily drain your Ring of Chainsaw, so like most other empowered states on other characters, Ring of Chainsaw serves as their gas tank while in Chainsaw mode. Speaking of which, all normal attacks while in Chainsaw mode deal liberation damage. In addition, Chisa will gain an extra finishing attack called Eradication, an extension of her normal attack rotation that can be accessed by either exhausting her entire Forte gauge or at the latter end of her empowered attack rotation. Either way, it's at the end of her combo. By the way, Chisa grants a shield to her entire party when casting Eradication, and unlike Augusta and Diuno, this shield is actually fairly significant, giving you the ability to run her as the party's sustain unit. She does have another Forte called Jetstream, but Jetstream is basically her stamina for gliding on her floating scissors. It doesn't really pertain to combat. Still though, pretty funny how she can levitate on a pair of scissors. I would say Chisa fits into the same archetype as Brand, Arrover, and Diuno, where they're supportive damage dealers. They can alleviate the need for you to bring a dedicated healer, because in a way, they are the dedicated healer. Her liberation is a blast of havoc damage around her that also heals the entire team. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, but her 4th basic attack can heal the party as well. Combining the shield on her Forte and heal on her liberation and basic 4, both are significant enough to keep your team alive, provided you're dodging a few things. More so because it's a party-wide heal, not just the active character. Anyway, for 15 seconds after, Chisa gains an empowerment that adds 120% bonus multiplier to her Chainsaw Man attacks. Wait, my bad. Chainsaw mode attacks. I'm still getting PTSD from the movie, not gonna lie. Furthermore, Eradication gets an even greater bonus to the additional damage added based on how much of her Forte you consume before using it. It's a lot like Galbrena's ultimate where you want to cast Liberation before activating your Forte gauge. Conceptually, the two are very similar in how they're designed. Both units charge up their Forte using their base normal attacks and have an empowered state with a new set of attacks that do big damage, of which you enter said empowered state by using their skill at full Forte, then Liberation to buff that empowered state, and then you go through another attack rotation again before ending things off with a big explosion and then swapping out. Am I missing something, or do they actually just play in the same exact way? Not a bad thing, mind you, but as I was taking a look at their rotation and abilities, Chisa and Galbrena share practically identical gameplay loops. In other words, if you know how to play Galbrena, you know how to play Chisa. Before talking about her attack rotation though, let's get through her passive intro and outro skills. Inherent skill 1 resets her skill cooldown anytime you kill a target marked by Unseen Snare, although funnily enough you almost never use her base skill in her rotation. Inherent skill 2 grants 20% bonus healing and Havoc damage when using her intro skill or Liberation, and Chisa can apply Unseen Snare and subsequently Havoc Bane stacks onto enemies even while off-field if you use her outro skill. Speaking of which, her intro skill is a blast of Havoc damage that can lead into basic attack 2 right away, and her outro skill is a 20-second buff to the entire party that raises the cap on negative statuses and Electro Rage by 3. Negative status being the aforementioned attribute debuffs like Havoc Bane, Arrow Erosion, and Spectral Frazzle. With respect to Havoc Bane, 3 stacks now goes up to 6 for a total of 12% defense reduction. On top of that, inflicting negative statuses or dealing negative status damage will apply Threat of Bane for 15 seconds, causing the unit to ignore 18% of the target's defense. This outro skill is overpowered, albeit it does carry a big caveat to it. The 18% ignore defense is awesome though. There hasn't been a unit capable of giving that stat to party members before, but on top of that, Chisa can also raise the stat cap of any attribute debuff, not just Havoc Bane, giving her party versatility in that field. One more thing, nearly all of her supportive utility, the shield, heal, and now outro skill apply to the entire team, technically making her the first true tertiary unit to be added to the game in over a year, not counting her rover. In essence, Chisa is the first general support unit to be based on negative status effects, an aspect of the game we haven't explored all that much yet. Not gonna lie, I wasn't expecting them to go in that direction with her. From her appearance, weapon type, and attack style, I fully expected her to be a main DPS or something. Anyway, let's talk about her rotations. Though I alluded to Galbrena and Chisa having damn near identical playstyles, their roles are fundamentally different. Most party rotations begin with your sustain unit, so her rotation 1 will assume you're opening with Chisa. Lock onto her target to apply Unseen Snare onto them, then Liberation immediately, followed by a basic attack 1-2, and then Rending Lunge and Death Snip, the new attacks available after basic 2. Follow up with an empowered skill since you should be at full ring of Chainsaw, then once you enter Chainsaw mode, essentially spam normal attack until you cast Eradication at the end, and then intro skill out. The looping rotation is effectively the same as the opening one, only this is for when you come back to Chisa after finishing your active unit. Intro skill in, basic attack 2, then Rending Lunge and Death Snip again, then Liberation here, follow up with an empowered skill and then basic attack combo until Eradication and then swap out. Very straightforward. Speaking plainly, it's been so long since I talked about a tertiary unit that it's kind of hard to give an accurate reading on how strong she is in the meta. When evaluating a damage dealer or even a secondary, you have a point of reference to compare them to, but in contrast to Shorekeeper, Verena, and even Air-Rover, Chisa plays so wildly differently from them that I'm not sure how well she measures up in the current meta. On one hand, Chisa can do significantly more TPS than either Shorekeeper or Verena, while still providing buffs to the team. On the other, Shorekeeper and Verena had the advantage of taking less heal time and offering much more powerful buffs and utility to the team. While Chisa does offer 18% defense ignore as part of her outro and potentially 12% defense reduction through Havoc Bane, not only do you have to go through the trouble of stacking Havoc Bane, but currently I would say Chisa's main standout is her synergy with attribute effects. Here's where things get tricky. On paper, Chisa does have party agnostic buffing in the sense that she doesn't have to fit into any one attribute, but due to the negative status clause, it becomes a lot more constraining. When looking at the teams they have available right now and also considering the fact that every player should have a copy of Shorekeeper and Verena, especially if you were given the version 1 5-star select, the biggest challenge would be finding a decent spot to put her in. First and foremost, the party would have to be able to apply negative status effects to even be able to utilize their outro skill, currently restricting Chisa to Cardedia, Chacona, Phoebe, and Zani. Those teams already have Air-Rover and Spectrover though, a free character and a pretty good one at that. Not very practical to put Chisa into Zani teams given the former can apply Spectral Frazzle, which Zani explicitly requires to power up her Liberation given that she herself can apply Frazzle. That leaves you with only one available option, Cardedia. To be fair, a rover isn't actually needed for Cardidia in the realm of support, making Cardidia actually benefit from Chisa. But when factoring the cost to obtain her and her signature, whereas a rover and their signature are free, it creates kind of a Rocha situation where Chisa technically is the new best tertiary unit for Cardidia, under the condition that you invest a lot into her to get to that point. What about in Havoc teams? Again, it's kinda complicated. Though Havoc Bane has the word Havoc in it, it has no affiliation with Havoc at all. Her situation's honestly so weird. Chisa reminds me of that stereotypical girl in every anime that's like super hot and popular, but for some reason, everyone except her has a boyfriend. I'm trying to think of a team that just screams put her in there, but based on what's available, unless you want to play her as the main attacker, it's pretty slim pickings here. Chisa's Kit could potentially allow you to play her as an attacker, but she's like Chilyuan where she's not meant to be a primary character. A character might have a DPS rotation, but that doesn't always imply they have main DPS damage. She's a support first and foremost, especially at S0. Now, could her sequences make her more usable for spending players? Possibly, S2 might be your ticket to that. Chisa gets a bit more damage in her kit, and her outro skill tacks an additional 50% all attribute bonus to the team. I get that you need to pull 2 more copies of her, but S2 makes her buffing capability more significant. S1 and S3 give her more personal DPS, which again can potentially bring her to a higher point than other tertiary units if you're willing to foot the cost. Pragmatically though, if you're a spending player and really love Chisa like I do, S2 is a good spot to aim for. But as usual, go for a signature weapon first before prioritizing sequences. Speaking of which, weapons, Kumokiri, her signature, is another one of those weapons that affords an entire buff to the team. In this case, 24% all attribute damage for 15 seconds when applying a negative status. While a powerful weapon for what it's trying to do, again it doesn't really open up Chisa to any new playstyles, so keep that in mind, we might still have to wait for a better future party. Something else that makes her kind of weird to use on Zani teams is that Zani's embers do not count as a negative status, thus her team won't benefit from Kumokiri, which is kind of annoying. Besides that, Lustrous Razor isn't too bad either, energy regen's never not appreciated, and Chisa mostly does liberation damage. Would be nice if the secondary stat was crit though. The best option for free-to-play players will be Meditation on Mercy, as it pertains to negative status effects, good for her too. If you're a Battle Pass player, you can also get Autumn Trace. Realistically though, you don't have to min-max Chisa's damage. She's a tertiary unit, so while she can certainly do more than Verena and Shorekeeper, your main priority is to get her buffs available, so you don't have to sweat too much on weapons. On to Echoes, just like with every other unit that came out in the second half of version 2, Chisa gets her own 3-piece Echo set, Thread or Severed Fate. If the Sensor icon wasn't a dead giveaway to you, I don't know what to tell you at this point. Inflicting Havoc Bane gives 20% attack and 30% liberation damage. Self-explanatory, go 2-piece Havoc damage and 3-piece Thread with her main Echo being Leviathan. Alternatively, being a healer, you can put Rejuvenating Glow on her with Bellborn or Fallacy of No Return as your main Echo. Main stats go crit, Havoc damage, and attack on 4, 3, and 1 cost respectively, and for substats, get energy up until around I would say 15%, then finish up with your usual crit, attack, and liberation damage. In conclusion, Chisa's a good character in concept and there's tons of potential for her to improve in the future. If Kuro continues to expand on negative statuses, Chisa can most certainly take advantage of that, and I think that's the angle they're going for. It doesn't take a genius to know she's going to synergize more with characters in version 3 than in version 2, so in regards to how well she sizes up in the meta, optimistically speaking, Chisa's like Arrover. Arrover was extremely bad when they first came out due to straight up having no team to actually play with, but with Cardidia and Chikona they do. Perhaps in version 3 if we get more depot stacking units, Chisa will hopefully get the same treatment. Ultimately that's where I would put her. I'd love to say everyone should pull for her because best girl, but to give you an unbiased evaluation, I recommend pulling for Chisa if you also plan to pull for whatever units that come out in version 3. Now, considering version 3 looks to be taking place in an urban city environment with a Japanese theme, I can expect all the weebs to come out in droves to find their waifu, so the odds of her getting a powerful team on deck are pretty high. At least I hope it is. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on Chisa, along with if you plan to pull for her or not. For the time being though, if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you'd like to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other character first impressions videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
Let the show begin!